Have you ever wondered why you can be totally obsessed with a super gritty, realistic crime drama one minute and then a soaring fantasy epic the next? Well, it turns out that's not just random. It's actually part of a massive 400-year-old debate. And today, we're going to dive right into that epic clash between reality and imagination that, believe it or not, still shapes everything we watch. So let's really think about this. On the one hand, we absolutely crave stories that feel real, right? Authentic, true-to-life stuff. But on the other hand, we love to escape into these impossible, totally breathtaking fantasies. So, what gives? Why the split? This isn't just a matter of personal taste. It's a really fundamental question about what art is even supposed to do. And you might think this is a pretty modern problem, but nope, this whole tension isn't new at all. In fact, we can trace it all the way back to this fierce battle of ideas in 16th century Italy. It was sparked by two thinkers who had completely opposite visions for what art should be, and, maybe more importantly, who it should be for. All right, first up in this intellectual duel, Lodovico Castelvetro. Now, this guy was a hardcore believer that for art to have any real power, it had to play by the strict, unbending rules of the real world. No exceptions. Okay, and get this. Castelvetro's argument is going to sound surprisingly modern. He basically said, forget all the moral lessons, forget the high-minded philosophy. Art has one job and one job only, to give pleasure to everyday people, to the masses. So how do you make sure your art does that? How do you create that pleasure? Well, for Castelvetro, there was only one way, through a perfect illusion of reality. He even created this super rigid framework to enforce it, calling it the unities, basically a set of rules to make sure everything on stage felt as real as life itself. And wow, were his rules specific. First up, only one single focused plot. No confusing subplots. Second, the entire story has to take place within a 12-hour window, max. And third, the action has to be stuck in a single location, so no jumping between cities or flashing forward 20 years. For Castelvetro, if you couldn't see it happen right there, in real time, it just wasn't believable. End of story. But as you can probably guess, not everyone was a fan of these super strict rules. So, enter his rival, Jacopo Mazzoni. And Mazzoni, he had a radically different idea. He thought art shouldn't just copy the world, it should be totally free to invent entirely new ones. Now, this is where Mazzoni gets really brilliant. He argued that art has two different modes. First, you have iconic art, which imitates things that actually exist, like a portrait or a historical drama. But then you have fantastic art, and that's where the magic happens. It imitates things born entirely from the artist's imagination. This was his big, powerful defense for incredible works like Dante's Comedy, a journey through a completely invented afterlife. So for Mazzoni, the big test wasn't whether something was factually true. The real question, the only question that mattered, was, is it credible? Can the artist make you believe in this world they've built, even if it's filled with impossible things? That was the whole game. And unlike Castelvetro, who was laser-focused on pleasure, Mazzoni said art could have three different goals. Sure, it could be a perfect copy of reality, or it could exist just for pure delight. But it could also serve a moral purpose, guiding our reason, helping us think and feel. For Mazzoni, art had options. It wasn't a one-trick pony. All right, so let's put these two philosophies head to head. You've got the rigid realist on one side, and on the other, the champion of credible fantasy. This is where you can really see the core of their epic disagreement. I mean, just look at this. The battle lines are drawn so clearly. For Castelvetro, it is all about pleasure, and you get there through strict, unbending realism. But for Mazzoni, the purpose is flexible, and the goal is just to create a credible world, where getting you to believe is way more important than sticking to literal truth. Okay, so you might be thinking, cool, history lesson, but that was centuries ago. Well, this is not just some dusty old debate. Its echoes are absolutely everywhere, shaping the very structure of the shows we binge, the movies we love, and the games we play right now. You can literally trace this exact tension all the way through the centuries. It was there in the rise of the realistic novel, then in the birth of epic cinematic fantasy, and it is happening right now in digital art. Just think of the battle between glossy, photorealistic CGI trying to perfectly capture reality versus stylized animation that just celebrates pure, beautiful invention. Let's make this super concrete. Think about a gritty, true crime documentary that is 100% playing by Castelvetro's rules of realism. But what about a sprawling superhero movie or a massive open-world fantasy game? That's pure Mazzoni, asking you to believe in something incredible simply because it feels credible. So when a filmmaker uses natural lighting and shaky cam to create a true-to-life feel, or a game designer builds an impossible, shimmering world from scratch, they're taking a side. Every single creative choice they make is basically a vote. Are you on Team Castelvetro or Team Mazzoni? And all of this leads to a massive question for our time. As our creative tools, everything from AI to glossy photorealistic 3D graphics, get more and more powerful, that line between the real and the invented is getting seriously blurry. This 400-year-old debate is suddenly more urgent than ever, so I'm going to leave you with this. What do we want from our art? A mirror that perfectly reflects our world, or a window that opens up to entirely